an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled, covering Doctor Who, Season 8, Episodes 11 and 12, Dark Water, and Death in Heaven. In these episodes, Mr. Pink dies, apparently, even though they have, progeny. I don't know what that means. The Master's back. I like him better now. And the dudes that I hate are back. But I also sort of like them better this time, too. Welcome to Unspoiled. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha.
I'm Jamie.
So, what are they called? The Cybermen?
Yep.
Yeah. So, you guys, I mentioned last time that I saw the Cybermen in a little screen cap thingy, and I was sort of like, oh, these guys again. But I thought that this actually made pretty good use of the concept of Cybermen. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't too, there's enough of a personal element added to it that it didn't feel like we were just doing the same idiotic shit again. That said, the overall story is really baffling to me due to the reasons I previously expressed in the introduction. So, Jamie, What did you think of this episode when you first watched it, if in fact you had watched it before?
I had watched this.
Okay.
I was confused because I hadn't watched most of the season, because I watched this when I believe when they aired, because I was like, oh, it's the end of the season, I should watch the finale. And I knew from previews or something that Missy was involved, and I wanted to see what the deal was with her.
Okay.
But I had missed enough upon first watch that I didn't really get the emotion behind the stuff with Danny and Clara. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so that stuff just sort of went right past me because I didn't have an emotional attachment to really anybody on the show.
Right.
At that point. When I watched it again doing the marathon, I think I was still in the same frame of mind. So really this watch, rewatch for the podcast, that I had paid more attention to the Clara and Danny stuff. I hadn't remembered back then that in fact, I don't think I even saw back then the episode where she meets, what's his name?
Danny?
Oswald.
Her future great grandson.
Orson. So none of that makes sense, really, because Danny died. Mm-hmm.
I'm very confused by that.
A distant relative of Danny's who just happens to look like Danny, and she assumed that, or we assumed that it was, a great-great-grandchild of hers because he said my grandmother was a time traveler. I mean, at that point, lots of people could have been time travelers. I'm
sort of I don't know, the headcanon that I went with was just, and this is it doesn't really fall under the subject heading of headcanon because those are sort of the thing that you can say to yourself is what happened and nobody can truly disprove it. But this can be disproven by the next season. My headcanon was going to be, we find a way to bring Danny back from the dead next season. I don't know that that's anything. And if it's not, this is really a weird move. I have to sort of restrain my arguing about it because I don't know if they're going to do that. But as of right now, I'm sort of like, what the fuck?
It's a weird move in that it seems that Stephen Moffat, who wrote both of these episodes, did not pay attention to his own show and remember that there was that character on that episode early on.
Right.
And granted, that was very early on in the season, but if you're going to kill off the character, you should probably at least look at your show Bible and know what you've done previously so that it doesn't contradict something that is established. Or give it a reason to be explained.
It also sort of undermines some things because I kept waiting for him to wind up being fine. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't fully invested in what was going on with him because I just took it for granted. This is going to work out and it's going to be fine. So I just sort of I didn't let any of it touch me the way that I would have if I trusted that what was happening was really happening.
Now, I don't know if this was something they decided to change at last minute or just not focus on and have it not be a thing at all. But there was a fan theory because on her Post-it notes, all those Post-it notes that she has in that first scene, one of them says 3 months. And there's no explanation for that. So there were a lot of fans that were like, oh, Clara's pregnant.
Oh.
And that would explain Orson later.
I guess that's true. I mean...
does that come to fruition later? I don't know, because the series or the season ends with her not with the Doctor anymore. So it's not something the show addresses or explains. It's completely fans trying to read all of those Post-its and apply them to things. And all of them apply to something that we know. Except that one.
Guys, I'm so tired. Covering this show has made me so tired. I'm going to be real with y'all for a second. I don't know what people like about Doctor Who. I'm going to just say it. I don't get it. I keep waiting to cross the threshold where I'm like, oh, okay, it has its problems, but it's charming. No, it's not charming. It's full of problems. It feels really lazy. The writers themselves don't feel like they're paying attention the way that the fucking viewers are.
Here's what I think. Because obviously I came into this as the spoiled host, a Doctor Who fan. And I'm still a Doctor Who fan. But I don't think this show holds up to being parsed apart and really dug into. I think this show is meant to be sort of not casually watched, but not closely watched. It's not meant for people to theorize and look for things that are hidden. It's a very surface show. And it doesn't seem to hold up to the kind of scrutiny that we give it by covering it in this way. It makes it feel lazy. I don't disagree with you. When the way that we are looking at it, it is lazy. I don't think that the showrunners or the writers feel that because they're not trying to make it more than it is.
I get what you're saying. And there are a lot of shows that I feel that way about, that you can't look too hard. But this is basic plot shit here. Mm-hmm. It's just, this isn't me noticing a weird little plot hole, because I have frankly given up on pointing those out in a lot of cases because there's just too many. But there's major plot stuff that it's just they don't pay any attention to. What's your job then?
Can I ask you something about Sherlock, since that's a Moffat show that you watched?
Sure.
I know that it got problematic towards the end. I don't exactly know why. Mm-hmm. My question really is, did it become this kind of thing where it was lazy?
No.
Did it get lazy at the end, or did it just get stupid
weird
and overcomplicated?
I actually thought that I hated the final season, and then when I covered it with Rashawn, I enjoyed it a lot more. So it sort of went in reverse to this show for me, where my initial viewing, I was like, what in the fuck? Oh, that was the stupidest shit. And then once we talked about it, I was like, oh, actually, okay, that's actually kind of fun. All right, you know what? I take it back. So I had the total reverse experience with that. Just really, like, coming away from the viewing angry. And then the more we discussed it, the more I liked it. Mm. So it's not, and it's sort of ironic to me because, you know, the Doctor in this season is so similar to Sherlock in so many ways that you would really think they would suffer a lot of the same problems, but the problems are pretty different in their way. But I really, like, they are really similar characters, and just like, I'm just such a genius that nobody understands me and they let me get away with absolute murder because I'm really smart. And it was just like, ugh. So in that regard, they're very similar, but otherwise it was a really different feel. And the problems that it wound up having, it wasn't really like, it wasn't major plot shit. It was just going into a sort of like psychedelic feel for the way that they told the story. That was like, what is this? This isn't Sherlock. Okay.
I'm not blaming all of the problems with Doctor Who on Stephen Moffat. I'm not going to lay that all on his shoulders. I agree with you that the show has a lot of problems. Most of them are plot related, which is a really big problem to have. Mm-hmm. I just don't know if it's because the show was from a different era where you saw it once, you maybe saw it on a rerun like 20 years later, and people weren't analyzing and paying that close attention at the time. That's just not how people watched TV back then. Then they bring it back in 2005, before streaming, before podcasts, you know, the most you would get was a website might do a like recap of it that they took a week to write, or a reviewer would write something, but it was like, still wasn't really picked apart, and it was going on the model of, this is what the show was, so this is what the show is.
Okay.
And I just don't know that there's enough substance or enough care in the way that we expect with plotting to live up to the kind of close attention that we do pay to it. And the discussions we're trying to have, where there might be great stuff within an episode that just gets completely derailed later. And it makes all that great stuff not matter.
I just don't, like, I have a hard time imagining myself binging this show and enjoying it either.
Okay.
You know, it's just, and this is what I was afraid of, you guys, when y'all wanted me to cover this, and I was just so worried about disappointing you all. And I feel like I'm doing that, but I've just given it a fucking real try. We're in the end of the 8th season.
I don't think that whether people are disappointed or not, that it sounds like you're not going to want to go further. I think you have given it much more time than even I thought you would, especially before we got to season 4, and I knew you wanted to quit. And I was like,
ugh, Martha,
hang on.
That really was so offensive. I'm still so mad.
But then the stuff with Donna was mostly great. That was an enjoyable season. The stuff with 11, I enjoyed watching and talking about. But since season 7, since Amy and Rory left, let's be honest, it hasn't been the same. It hasn't felt the same. And that's not just because of Clara. It's not just because of a new Doctor. The stories aren't sticking with me.
It's such a shame because they have such great general ideas.
Yeah.
But they fumble them so bad. And I would like to say, I'm not even saying that I want to quit. I am saying maybe if we continue watching, we do 3 episodes at a time instead of, 1. I don't know if that tends to be the way story arcs go or if 2 is better. But
I mean, sometimes there aren't even story arcs.
that's true, too.
But, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to doing 2 at a time. I also wouldn't fight you on ending. I had stopped caring about Doctor Who by the time we got to this point. And while there have been some things in this that I've enjoyed, and Capaldi has grown on me as a Doctor, I still don't love him. I still don't love Clara.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not excited about the show. I did like these 2 episodes, and I did like Flatline last week. I thought was really good. And I like Missy. Missy's a great character.
That was like the saving grace for me of these 2 episodes, was that Missy is such... The actress they picked for her... First of all, it's bizarre to me that Stephen Moffat said the Doctor couldn't be a woman when the Master can be a woman. What's that about exactly?
I'm sure he thought he was doing something clever.
You did it yourself, dude. What's your argument?
I don't know. Maybe a bad guy Time Lord can be a woman.
Yeah, only
Doctor.
a villain.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's infuriating.
She's incredible. The writing for her is incredible. She has such just hilarious lines.
She's
in
like
this show.
Effervescent. Her energy comes off the screen, and you just feel yourself like floating to the ceiling watching her. It's insane.
I want an entire show that's just her. And that's not what we're going to get.
Yeah, that's fair. Actually,
Ever.
I could watch a show about just her. That'd be pretty good.
She's like fucking Loki. Like, she's hilarious and devious and a trickster and fun to watch. That's what I want. She made what would be otherwise a pretty overall depressing episode. The part where she's pretending to be a robot?
I swear to God. When she started to do that, I was like, oh, you did not. And he falls for it immediately. Because she knew he would. Because that's the way he fucking... Oh, it was so good. I love that so much.
She's amazing. Every line she had, I wish I just had her dialogue. Because when she's singing Mickey, but as Missy... Like, everything is just so funny. And it's obvious that Stephen Moffat loved writing that character because the Master is a fun character to write for. John Sim was also incredibly enjoyable to watch as the Master. This sort of chaotic evil thing is really fun. And the people that get to play it are obviously having a really great time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that Jenna Coleman was having fun a lot playing Clara.
I think so, too.
But I'm not so sure about Capaldi.
I think he was actually having fun.
Okay.
But I want to put an asterisk around that, like, for the beginning of the season. I bet he felt like the viewers did, where we were like, oh, there's going to be more to this than just rage all the time. And then it started to become clear that was all we were going to do. And maybe he
that's
began
possible.
to lose his patience.
And, like, not to spoil the next season, but he is different later.
Okay.
I don't know how to describe it. He loosens up. He doesn't lead with anger, which I feel like most of the season was leading with anger. And I wonder if that's because of the character from The Thick of It that he played, where that's what he was most known for, where he was just a angry, swearing politician guy. And, you know, there's a little joke in here about the psychic paper being full of swear words and him being, you know, like, internally, you know, swearing all the time or whatever it is that he says. It's like, that's obviously like a nod to that character that he played for so long.
Right.
I also know that Peter Capaldi or Peter Capaldi was a humongous Doctor Who fan, wanted to be the, like, president of their fan club when he was 14 years old. Probably, like David Tennant, was absolutely overjoyed to get to play this role that he had loved as a child. But he didn't get to have as much fun with it as Tennant did.
Yeah, definitely not.
There was so few moments where he's light and silly. Yet the show is 0 calories. And he's, like, doing all this heavy lifting in these episodes where it's like, oh, what are the stakes? Why are you acting like this?
And I'll tell you what, we've talked about the difference between Amy and Rory. And, of course, a big part of that is just we loved them as individuals. And Rory is just the biggest cinnamon roll. Best boy.
Miss him. Love him.
But it doesn't feel like the Doctor and Clara actually like each other.
Right, and she says, he's my best friend. I'm his best friend.
And I was just like, in what fucking universe, dude?
Yeah.
You trust him so little that you steal the TARDIS keys, so you think, before you even ask the question because you're so sure he's going to refuse to help you or even consider helping you. Mm-hmm. That's not friendship. That's not trust. That's not a good relationship. You're blackmailing him because you fully expect him to not give a shit that the person you love is dead, which is insane.
If that had happened, when that happened to Rory, when Rory died the first time,
mm-hmm.
and Amy was like completely distraught, and the Doctor knew that it can't let you follow him through that crack in the earth or whatever it was, the wall.
Right.
And then she started to forget immediately, and he had to hold on to the secret of knowing that Rory had existed when she forgot him.
Mm-hmm.
If she hadn't forgotten him, and she had gone to him and said, is there a way to get him back? How do we get him back? The Doctor would have tried to figure something out,
mm-hmm.
even if it was just to show her that it's not possible.
Yep.
And she never would have had to threaten him with him not being able to get back into the TARDIS
mm-hmm.
ever again and being stuck inside a volcano. Okay, but tell me why you were so mad about the volcano.
Okay, so it's first that I just said, which is the fact that she trusts him so little. And so do I, to be
mm-hmm.
honest. I mean, the show has instructed us to not think the Doctor cares about anybody anymore. It's just continually an experiment, a hypothetical for him. He feels like a fucking commenter somewhere who's playing devil's advocate, and it's like there's no stakes that he's invested in anymore. Mm-hmm. So I'm not even mad at her for choosing to do that so much as I'm mad at the show for expecting me to then believe that, oh, we're best friends deal. Because mm-hmm. that's not friendship or anything, guys. Just FYI, if you're in a relationship where you feel you have to blackmail a person into helping you with things, they're not your friend. And you aren't, like, that's not somebody you can depend on, and you shouldn't trust their help. So, just getting that out of the way. But also the fact that the whole thing that we're meant to believe before the reveal is that she has, like, basically drugged the Doctor. It's a, sleeping thing, she thinks. But it's the essential, I'm going to jab a syringe into your neck of some tranquilizer and do something, and you're going to wake up and find out what I did. And what it turns out to be is that it didn't work on him, but he turned it around and used it on her just to see how far she would take it. Why? She wants your help. That should be enough. That should be it. So there's two aspects of this that are fucked up. One, that he was willing to put her through this fucking distress and guilt for his own fucking amusement is really what it comes down to. And secondly, that the show wanted us to believe that this was what was happening and then undo it instantly in the next moment just so that they could really get us going and like, oh my God, look what she did. Again, for their own amusement. There's no meaning. It doesn't matter. That whole sequence could have been completely cut and the show would have proceeded in the exact same way. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. And there's no significance to it beyond letting us know that she doesn't trust the doctor and the doctor likes to fuck with people for fun, which is not what the show wants us to take away from that scene. But that's what we are taking away.
She doesn't trust the doctor and the doctor doesn't trust her.
Exactly. And I don't I don't understand why I'm supposed to like this relationship or root for them.
I don't think he was fucking with her to see what would happen. I think that he didn't trust her either. And he wanted to see how far she was willing to go because he knew exactly what she was doing as far as going around the TARDIS, finding all the TARDIS keys. He had his back to her, but he, as we find out later, knew what she was doing.
I'm moving my mic back because apparently I'm yelling too much and my fucking sound is blowing out on my thingy.
Okay,
but why? Why does he want to see Jamie?
I don't have an answer.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He wants to fuck with people. That's literally the only answer if you don't have one already. And I don't see any option other than that.
Can I tell you why I thought you were mad?
Why?
Do you remember the Pompeii episode? With Donna and the doctor. Peter Capaldi played the father of that family that they save in Pompeii.
Oh, right.
And everybody's been waiting for you to remember that or realize it. And then you're like on Facebook ranting about the volcano. And I thought you put it together.
Why would I be mad about that?
That's why I asked you why you were mad. Because I was like, is she mad that it's the same actor playing two different roles? Is she mad that it's not explained why?
No, I don't care about that.
Okay.
I don't care about that at all. That's fine.
I thought being in a volcano that maybe you were even like, well, this is really fucked up that he looks like the guy who, almost died because of a volcano.
Nah.
And now she's got him in a volcano.
No, it's purely character stuff. That, recasting somebody, that's one of those things that never really has bothered me, having them come back as somebody else. Karen Gillan was
also in that episode.
Was she?
Yes.
Oh, that's so funny.
She plays one of those weird seers or whatever.
Oh, I remember you telling me that now. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't, this just sets up such a bad precedent for the start of everything, that this is how they're treating each other.
Yeah.
And that really, colored everything else for me, and I couldn't really get past it. And the fact that, she's talking to Danny at one point and says, he's my best friend and the one man I would never lie to.
And it turns out it's Danny. She's talking to a Cyberman. And
he doesn't even seem like, he immediately jumps to basically put me out of my misery. But the fact that she said that to him.
He doesn't even immediately jump to that. He helps her and then reveals who he is.
When she says all of that, he takes his helmet off right after that.
Is it?
Yeah.
She doesn't say that when they're still in the Nether Sphere?
No.
And then he, transports her to a graveyard?
No. They're in the graveyard already. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that he doesn't have to react because that's truth that he already knew.
I mean, I guess, but it's a fucked up thing to not acknowledge that you claim to love me, but you feel free to lie to me. Again, their relationship is a mess. Everybody's supposed to care about one another, and nobody is honest with anybody. Everybody sucks. Over and over again. And they all act like, I'm so sorry, and then do it again immediately. I don't believe you.
I don't think Danny sucks.
Okay, that's fair. Danny doesn't suck.
Because-
I just sort of like rope him into it, and it's not his fault because he's a soldier, and that's part of the weirdo I hate soldiers thing that we're doing also, which I'm just mystified
And
by.
I don't even hate him for that because I don't subscribe to this, like, suddenly we hate soldiers thing. I think Danny's a good person who got involved with a girl who's been lying to him from the very beginning, and he deserves better. And then he died for it and ended up having to save her and the guy that she's been lying to him about. I mean, Danny's just a victim.
I mean, he is. I'm just saying, like, mentally, I am just sort of like associating him with the whole I hate soldiers thing, which is just so stupid. And so and they really like go in on that this episode. And that becomes like the thing at the end with him being a soldier. And
I did really like when he knows what the next move needs to be, and he acknowledges that the doctor also knows what the next move needs to be. And then the doctor turns to Clara to make her do the hard part, and Danny's like, just like a general, having everybody else do your dirty work. And I loved that, because that's true.
Yeah.
And the doctor absolutely could have done it and spared Clara from having to basically kill her boyfriend again.
Yep.
But I agree. I don't understand their relationship, the doctor and Clara. I don't get it. I haven't for a while because she's lying to him and then she's lying about him.
And Danny is so contemptuous of the doctor in that moment of just like, oh yeah, look at you doing the fucking thing I knew you'd do. I just don't understand how he's supposed to be like fine with her going off with the doctor, but then we're meant to think he isn't. But
yeah, it's not consistently
then he talks
written.
about him like this right in front of his face and makes it so clear he doesn't have much respect for this guy. But it's so inconsistent and back and forth. It's mystifying. You guys, I feel so sad. I really do. Like, so, and like I said, the whole thing with Danny and his death, there's like moments in this that almost really worked. Like him suddenly being hit by a car while he's on the phone with her and her just being like, hello, where'd you go? And finding out from a stranger who happened to pick his phone up on the street. That is fucked up. And that's like really affecting as a moment. Later on, when she is being checked on by, is it a neighbor, a grandmother?
It's her grandmother.
Her grandmother. And she's like saying, it wasn't terrible, it was ordinary. He was laying there and everybody just kept shopping and getting on with their day. That could have been a really affecting monologue. But it's delivered as she's like pacing around her kitchen in this weird way. There's not enough emotional weight to their relationship to begin with for me to believe it. It's just so, like I keep saying, they have so much potential to work with, but they have executed it all so badly that this moment could have been absolutely devastating. And instead, it feels really incidental. She delivers this, like, you know, this what feels like it should be really affecting thing, but it's in the midst of a conversation with a woman that we don't know, like, almost at all, who just
met once when the doctor came with that disgusting turkey.
Right. We have the reaction of her grandmother just being like, he deserved better, you deserve better. And her saying, deserve? Nobody deserves anything, but I am owed. And it's a weird transition. Feeling like you are owed is really the same thing to me as I deserve something. I don't really
I also
get that.
question, why is she owed?
That was my next question. She says this as if it's definitive and like we're supposed to get it as an audience, and I don't see why.
Are we supposed to believe that she is owed because she went into his timeline willingly to save him?
Maybe?
That's not how this works. You don't do things for people expecting payback.
I think she would argue she doesn't expect payback. Like, she didn't do it expecting payback. But now, seeing how things went, it's like the least he could do.
Well, then you actually ask for that favor.
That makes you sound like you think you deserve it. Which is what you just argued nobody deserves anything. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, in the abstract, just saying somebody else deserves to suffer heartbreak and not me. Okay, sure, I can understand you being like, nobody deserves anything more than anybody else. But to follow it up immediately with I am owed, it just feels like you're saying it with different words and it's not profound, even though we're trying to act like you really are saying something here. You're not. So this whole bit, it was meant to be, because it's the penultimate finale episode. It's supposed to be the culmination of her relationship with Danny and this emotional weight that just didn't happen. And so the whole thing just falls over.
Yes. If this exact same story had been done but Amy and Rory,
mm-hmm.
when we had spent a season and a half, let's say, with Amy and Rory, or even if this had happened with Amy and Rory in that first season,
mm-hmm.
if he hadn't been swallowed up by the crack in time, but instead had been taken over by Cybermen, had died ordinarily, and then became a Cyberman.
Mm-hmm.
Amy was written differently, and she wouldn't have been like, I am owed this, or even if she felt it, she would have gone to the doctor and said,
mm-hmm.
I need you to do this for me.
This would have led to a fucking conversation.
Yeah.
Instead of a face-off on a volcano.
Yeah.
What?
And I think that a lot of this is that Clara has been written very inconsistently from the very beginning, and they still don't know who she is.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm supposed to believe, because Missy tells me in this episode that putting a control freak with the doctor was going to amuse her, but I still don't know why we're supposed to believe she's a control freak.
Yep. That line was a mystery to me. Clara, a control freak? What? How? When?
Never.
Ever have we seen that? Speaking as a control freak. Let me tell you, I don't see it.
Yeah, same. I mean, I just had a conversation with my therapist about feeling like I need to control everything and trying to learn how to let other people do stuff. It informs everything you do when you're a control freak. Everything.
Yep. God, I'm just... All right, so... I'm just trying to figure out how to continue talking about this because, like I said, I don't want to just jump to I'm quitting the show, but I feel like I have given the show a lot of chances and I can't keep giving it the benefit of the doubt after it keeps doing shit like this. So my main issue overall that has happened over the course of watching 8 seasons of this, including this, and thinking that Danny was going to make it out just fine is a really good example. I have grown so mistrustful of the writers that nothing actually affects me anymore because I don't believe any of it. As it's happening on the screen in front of me, I fully am prepared for Danny to come back to life. I fully am prepared for all of these oh my God, the doctor's trapped in this box and I don't know how he's going to get... And I'm like, no, he's going to be fine. Whether it actually winds up being fine isn't relevant because I'm not invested while I watch because they have fucked with me too many times and I don't believe them anymore. And when you get to that point, there's just no... You're not engaged when you watch. You're just... I feel like every time I watch the show now, I have an eyebrow raised and I'm going, yeah, okay. The whole time. And that's not a way to fucking approach something. I don't want to have that attitude, but they have earned that attitude, I feel.
Mm-hmm. I don't disagree. There are no stakes. And even going so far as actually killing Danny off in this episode, we can still be like, well, is it going to stick?
Exactly.
And not to compare things to Game of Thrones or whatever, but what was so game-changing about that show was how willing they were to kill people that you thought were safe with plot armor.
Right.
It's something that Krista and I have talked about with the Vampire Diaries, because every time Damon or Stefan is in any kind of trouble, we're like, but he's going to be fine because plot armor. Mm-hmm. You know, they're the two lead characters of that show. They're going to be fine.
Yeah.
You know the Doctor is going to be fine because worst case scenario, he regenerates.
Yep. And they've even tried to take away his ability to regenerate, but they, like, give it back.
Right.
So...
And anybody who has died that we cared about has come back. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard to be emotionally invested.
Because the two options are either he comes back and we were right to not get that upset because it didn't mean anything, or he doesn't come back and they were so incompetent with the way they told that story because the two of them have descendants. Neither of those is a good turnout for that. Right.
Like, even Amy and Rory, they left. They didn't die. But if they had come back and if we had seen them in any way, as thrilling as it might be for fans to be able to see Amy and Rory again, it would be like how I felt when Rose managed to get herself back from this other universe for a short amount of time to help the Doctor, but not be able to stay. When Rose has always been one of my favorites, and when she came back, I wanted to be excited about it. But in my head, I was like, this just... It takes away the amount of pain I felt when she was lost. Mm-hmm. Because you let her come back so easily 2 seasons later.
Yep.
Even though she didn't get to stay. Even though I was frustrated that she didn't have enough scenes with David Tennant or whatever, bringing her back just took away everything that they did to her.
Yeah.
And made it not really matter. Giving her a version of the Doctor to be happy with was not a happy ending for me because it took away how heartbreaking and heartbroken I was when she got stuck in another universe and he tried to say he loved her by burning up a sun and didn't do it. So there are no stakes. Mm-hmm. And I have often felt since that point when they brought Rose back for that one episode that the stakes don't matter on this show anymore. Because if we lose somebody, they can come back. We lost Rory. It sucked. He came back. Which I'm happy about because Rory is the best. But how brave was it for them to kill him? How brave was it for them to kill Danny, in theory? Whether he comes back or not, actually having the balls to do it should be a big deal. Mm-hmm. But is he coming back? With this show, probably.
Right.
So, yeah, like it's really hard to stay emotionally invested. Like the one thing that I think has stuck was the fact that Donna had to lose everything that she'd experienced so that she didn't die. And if she saw the Doctor on the street, she maybe wouldn't know who he is. Or maybe wouldn't, it would kill her. So, like, those are the only stakes that have stuck. Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to read into this too much, but I will say the fact that the only stakes that really stuck that matter to me are Donna not being able to remember the Doctor, not being allowed. And the fact that there was no attraction between her and the Doctor, and she didn't have a romantic partner that was part of the show, really. I don't think that's accidental. I feel like the show really values young, beautiful companions much more. And Donna, as being older and less conventionally attractive, writing her off and giving her a heartbreaking ending was like a lot easier for them to do and stick to. And that might also be because maybe the audience didn't feel the same way about her, but I have a hard time believing that. I don't know.
I think I don't know what I think most of the audience liked her, but I don't know because
based on what I've heard.
At the time, I didn't love her, but when I rewatched the very first time I ever did a rewatch, I was like, oh, what was my problem? She's amazing.
Yeah.
So I got over it, but I don't know. I mean, I think that you've got something there for sure.
I just don't think that's an accident. Like there's a correlation there. And probably it's partially what happened with Martha as well, being a black woman. There's just they were both treated differently. And I think there is a reason for that, you know. And you know, all of this setting aside whether or not it sticks, that is looking at it without even talking about, I don't care about Danny anyway. Because he's a fine dude, but their relationship it's bad. It's toxic and bad. And he deserves better. And I just don't have the oh my God, but they were meant to be together. Rory and Amy, they're a fucking package deal. They're meant to be together. You believe that. And so when she has to forget him, it's just the worst possible fucking thing.
Yeah.
But with Danny, you're just sort of I mean, better for him maybe at this point, than otherwise. Jesus, you know?
Well, even when you look at this episode begins with her on the phone with all of these Post-its full of all of the lies that she's told him. Mm-hmm. And her saying on the phone that she loves him and she's never going to say that to another person again in her life.
Why does she think that?
If you look back to what the previous episode was that had aired 1 week before this one, why am I supposed to believe that how that ended led to how this began? Mm-hmm. What happened in between for her to suddenly be like, are you on your way over? Well, I have to tell you this right now. I can't wait for you to get here. I love you. What changed? Because last week he found out that you had been lying to him. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't nearly angry enough about it.
This is actually, I hadn't even meant to mention this, but now that you bring this up, I feel like I must. I really appreciate you bringing it up. Just the fact that why does she feel this urgency to say this to him? Because I thought she knew something was about to go down and knew that maybe he was in danger or that she was. And she decided to I have to tell him before it's too late. And then when his voice disappears, it was going to turn out that whatever she was afraid of maybe happening to her happened to him instead. That it turned out the danger, because, this show does the in media res fairly often, where we'll open and things are halfway finished and we get the shocking moment that we're what? How did this happen? And then we backtrack. So I thought this moment of her being I desperately need to tell you this right now was going to turn out to be an in media res moment. And we were going to find out that he was a collateral damage in something that she was involved in and already panicking over. And that was why she was writing out all the lies she had told. Taking it at the surface level, her writing all of these out, but then insisting that she call and tell him this over the phone instead of in person is baffling to me. And I keep on being maybe we'll learn about it next season. I keep saying maybe the next season will fix this because I can't understand what they were doing. Why was she because if we're looking at the fact that she's writing out all the lies she's told, I'm expecting her to be ready to have a moment with him where she finally confesses everything And she's like, I want to do a fresh start. I'm really sorry. Here are all the lies I've told. I'm going to finally be honest with you about it all. If that was what she was intending, though, there's no reason for her to make him like stop in the park and talk to her on the phone about it instead of just waiting for him to get to the house.
Right.
So what in the fuck even is that? What did they mean for me to believe was going on there?
They wanted the shocking moment.
But they could have had the shocking moment of him getting hit by a car without her writing out all her lies, without her telling him, I'll never say this to another person. Those aren't necessary. For the shock of his death while he's on the phone with her, that would fucking be shocking either way.
Right.
So why?
It could have been, oh, are you on your way? Okay, I'm just making sure because I really have to talk to you as soon as you get here. And them having a casual conversation while he's walking over. Mm-hmm. And then he gets hit by a car, and then it's revealed that she has all these Post-it notes of things that she needed to tell him. And now she can't.
Yep.
But I think what we're learning here is that we could write the show better.
Yeah. 100%. And like, that's not something that I like to say because there is so much that goes into writing that I don't ever want to be flippant about that. But honestly, this feels like a series of scenes that they put in a hat and they just pulled out at random. Nothing goes together. Logically, emotionally, none of it goes together. And it so doesn't go together that I genuinely don't even know what they were trying to do. Because sometimes I can at least give that and be like, look, what they were going for here was XYZ. It did not work. But I get what they were trying to do. But that, I have no idea. Best guess. Anybody out there, if you want to like hit me with, okay, so here's what I think they meant. I don't know if you can do that without it being spoilery. But also, if it turns out that they don't explain this, then I would rather know now, to be honest. So she blackmails the doctor. He says, go to hell. And she's like, fair enough. And begins to walk away. And I'm like, we know that's not what he meant. And sure enough, a moment later, he's like, what are you talking about? We're about to go to hell. Grab on tight. We're going. And in the midst of all of this is the whole thing with Missy. Like I said, she's the best. The thing that really keeps everything afloat. Without her, these would have been a couple of real fucking clunkers, these two episodes. I mean, they're still, but it would have been so much worse. And as they are like going and exploring this weird facility, what is it called? 3W?
3W, yeah.
We see Danny's arrival in the afterlife, which this is one of those things that I don't know how it hit way back, but the whole like the afterlife is very bureaucratic and you're just going to wind up in like a gray office has been done so much that I didn't find this particularly interesting. I did think the guy who plays the handler was hilarious. Mm-hmm. He felt like a coked out Michael Sheen to me. Just really high energy over things that like maybe don't deserve it, but I can't help but love it because you are so committed.
Michael Sheen should play the master sometime.
I mean, he should play every...
agreed.
Look, I'm just going to put this out there. Could we have a Michael Sheen doctor and a Michael Sheen master at the same time? Because I would love it if the master was like, oh yeah, I regenerated to look like you to fuck with people. Because that sounds like a master move. And it would be very confusing for the audience, especially if we weren't told, oh, that's not the doctor, that's the master. And then we find out, like, you know, episode 10, we see the two of them in a room together and we're like, wait, what? That wasn't the doctor this whole time? I think like that would be really good. And how much fun would Michael Sheen have just being the bad guy and the good guy?
I mean, he has fun with everything he ever does.
I love this idea, Jamie.
I've never seen anybody have more fun doing their job than Michael Sheen playing any role he plays. Have you watched Staged? It's on Hulu.
No, I have never heard of it.
Okay. It is a show that Michael Sheen and David Tennant did during the pandemic where they're supposed to be starting a play and then the country goes into lockdown. And the director of the play wants them to continue, like, to start their rehearsals, essentially, over Zoom. And a lot of it is them just being, like, bored and annoyed that they're stuck at home and just talking shit. And I feel like most of it was ad-libbed, and it is so fucking funny. And their chemistry, even over Zoom, is just so good. And Michael Sheen is so funny. And now there's a second season that they did where America wants to make a new, like an American version.
Oh, God.
And they cast everybody that was on the original one except for David and Michael.
Oh,
and
my
so
God.
they're all pissed off.
Oh,
It's amazing.
I love that. That sounds really
It's amazing.
funny.
Because then they have to, like, work with the actors who are going to audition to be David and Michael. And they're super jealous of, like, everybody just wants to play Michael.
Oh, that's funny. I like that.
It's so funny. The episodes are, like, 15 minutes long or something, 20 minutes each. It's a quick watch, and it's hilarious. And Michael Sheen just has this massive beard, and his hair is huge. I love him. And in the first season, David Tennant had his crazy pandemic hair where it was just way too long. It's incredible.
Well, I'm here for a master regenerating and impersonating the Doctor, but
That's a great idea that will never happen.
yeah, now the master is dead, so that's a bummer.
Is she?
Is she? I don't know. She gets vaporized, it looks like.
It's not the same kind of vaporizing. That's what makes me think it's something else.
Okay. Well.
Because she goes blue and everybody else sort of went orange and then disintegrated.
You know,
she goes blue and sort of disappears.
There's a moment later where the Doctor is like, oh yeah, I totally found my homeland. And then we see that he definitely didn't and he's lying.
Because she lied.
Well, did she? Or is she still alive and she just got transported to it and she's covered it in a cloaking device? Or is ruling it or is doing something to hide it from him? Maybe she moved it.
Maybe she did.
I don't know.
I have a little Missy Pop doll that I had to have, even though I had only seen her in these episodes. But she was so memorable that... And, like, didn't I refer to her as an evil Mary Poppins? I forgot the fact that she fucking shows up coming down.
She literally
like
is Mary Poppins at a po. Yeah, it's pretty good.
I completely forgot about that. She's amazing. I really just want Michelle Gomez playing the Master, having adventures. That's it. I don't want anybody... I mean, Michael Sheen as the Master would be great too, but I would really just enjoy watching her.
I mean, her as the Doctor and as the Master. We could just do that too. Fine with both. I'm just saying.
Sure.
If we're going to have a female Doctor now, why don't we have it be somebody bonkers? I'm here for it.
Yeah, she just lights up every scene that she's in and makes it even better. It does suck that she killed that girl Osgood because I like that character, and that's, you know, a death that's probably going to stick.
That one bummed me out a whole lot.
Yeah.
And they had to really rub it in by having the Doctor sort of like notice her, you know, and then take it all away from her. And I was just like, that's just mean-spirited, you guys. Come on. Why?
Yeah, the Doctor offering her a companion position, basically.
You know, like, ugh. Just...
Yeah. And that just smacks of, oh, you guys really like her. Fans really like her. Ha ha. Because Stephen Moffat is a troll.
That's what it feels like, is I'm being trolled by the show actively. That is what's happening. I don't know. You know, I understand your argument about that this show doesn't stand up to the kind of scrutiny we give it, but I don't even think that's true. I mean, like, there are some episodes that worked really well and were very affecting, but I feel like they are the minority of what I've watched. There's like 10.
Oh, definitely.
Out of how many have we watched at this point?
I mean, we've watched 8 seasons of 12 or 13 episodes.
So
96 episodes?
Okay, so roughly 10%.
Maybe 100?
I just really don't understand why this show has the reputation and the following that it has. I just don't get it. I really want to get it. And part of me wonders if I came to like Buffy at this point in my life, would I feel this way about Buffy? Probably. I hate to say it, but probably. So maybe it's just I don't have the same like tolerance that I used to. But man, it's really, I want to like just yell, I trusted you, to all of you in your face with tears in my eyes. And because I don't know what to make of it. And I really keep thinking that it's going to eventually crystallize for me. 8 seasons and it hasn't yet. In fact, it's worse than ever. And I don't know what I'm missing. What has made you all hang on?
Here's my conundrum. Because, I didn't. So
no, you didn't. Yeah. And I didn't know that when we started this, Jamie. And I feel like you have a little bit of the blame for yourself because you were like, yeah, I can't wait to cover Doctor Who. Never mentioning that you fell off watching it because it began to suck so hard. Ma'am. So I'm looking at you. I'm looking at all of you.
I was hoping that me getting some distance from what made me fall off, because I didn't fall off necessarily. It wasn't consciously like it just sucks now. It was that I didn't feel connected to it anymore, to the stories they were telling and the characters that they had. And now, like, putting that all together, yeah, it's because it just didn't. The writing just wasn't holding up. It wasn't holding my attention. But my conundrum here is that every season we get to this point and everybody's like, oh, just hold on until season 9.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I really love season 10. And I'm like, yeah, I really loved seasons 1 and 2. I really enjoyed season 5. But I really felt like, let's just make it to when 11 leaves. And that would have given it a fair shot, because I knew from the beginning, just from our first episode, that you were like, I don't know about this show.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought if we can get through Matt Smith's run, I think we would be good, because I held on for that.
Mm-hmm.
And was able to stay mostly engaged up to that point. This is the point where I just, even trying to marathon it, wasn't as fully invested doing the binge watch.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I agree with you. I don't know that I necessarily trust the audience telling me that next season is better and the season after that is better, because I've watched a lot of them.
That's what I was going to say, was just in summary, Jamie doesn't trust y'all either. That's where we're at.
I've watched most of season 9. I've watched some of season 10. It didn't hold my interest. And even with Jodie Whittaker, I watched half the season and then forgot to watch the rest of it. I'm not even trying to be funny. I literally forgot.
You're not. I know you're not. That's what makes it funny.
It sat on my DVR for so long that when it popped up on Amazon, I was like, oh, I don't need to keep it on my DVR anymore. I'll watch it eventually. I get it. I get where you're coming from.
I just feel so sad about it because I was so worried this exact thing was going to happen. This was why I resisted covering this show for so long. And I know that people are out here giving us 5-star reviews. People like us talking about it, even though we are trashing it.
Yeah.
And so that's another mystery for me, is how can you love something but enjoy hearing us be like, this is garbage and it sucks? How? What is with you guys? What is with you all? Help me understand you. I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone. I feel like I just don't I have been doing Unspoiled for years and I thought I understood what made it popular. And this flies in the face of everything that I thought y'all wanted from the show.
So I have a question, because I know you've stopped covering things before, but that was... Were you getting feedback on things like Scandal?
No. I was just doing that one solo, so I wasn't as invested in finishing it.
And what about The Walking Dead?
Walking Dead was a combo of me and Owen trying to find time to record together, which is always hard, and how enraged I would get talking about it every week began to genuinely drain me. Mm-hmm. Because it was like, that show is so poorly written, and it doesn't even have the fun veneer this show does to at least make it so that you don't end feeling depressed. That show was like, I'm going to make everything be as bad as it can be, both in terms of the quality of writing, but also what happens to people. And then I'm going to pretend that's high art because people are suffering and that makes it good. It was just so self-indulgent and pretentious, but saying nothing. Mm-hmm. And that, it just felt like I was enabling that somehow by continuing to cover it.
So when you quit that, did you have a decent listenership for it? Were you getting feedback from the audience at all?
Some, but it wasn't, because it was a show that was currently airing. It had a really different audience than the rest of my shows. This is something that it's still airing, but these seasons are so far behind now that it still feels like it's a totally different situation. I was covering Walking Dead the week after the episode aired. So it was a really, really different vibe. And that also was part of it, was that I didn't have anybody being like, trust me, it gets better. Just put your head down and get through this season and it'll get better. There was nobody out there saying that, and I had no reason to believe that. So it was also me just cutting my losses.
What about something like Westworld?
What about it?
I don't know how people feel about that show, but I feel like it had a pretty popular and solidly told first season, and I liked the second season, but I started watching the third season and never watched past the first episode, and nobody was really talking about it either. Mm-hmm. So it feels like it took a drop in quality. That
was a weird one because, while it was something that had recently aired, it had been done for months by the time we got to it. Mm-hmm. And you're right, there were a lot fewer people talking about it, but I avoid those spaces anyway. Yeah. So I wasn't aware of that. And going into it with just my outside point of view, I enjoyed the third season. It wasn't as good as the others. It had some serious weak points, but I still enjoyed it. And there were really good conversations to be had. Okay. You know what I mean? It was sort of that. There are some shows that are like that, where it's like the conversations are so much less about the show itself and about more the concepts that they're playing with. And that was how it felt with that one. But in terms of interaction, there wasn't that much for that one. And I don't think the listenership on that show was that high. And I think they're doing another season, but...
Are they?
I don't remember. I feel like I heard that, but with the pandemic, so many things have been sort of backburnered or canceled after all or whatever. Yeah, so
I'm just trying to think of shows that had a drop in viewership or quality or something that you, to even compare it to like how you handled, not covering it or not being happy with it anymore.
I mean, that's sort of what happened with, was it Luke Cage? Did we cover the second season? I feel like we just didn't cover the second season when it dropped. The first season started off
Is there a second season of that show?
I'm trying to remember. But it was like, let's see, Luke Cage season 2. Yep, there is. There is.
I never watched it.
Yeah, so the first season starts off really strong. Everybody was asking me to cover it. I was like, okay, we'll make this happen. Then around episode 5, it truly, completely crumples. And then the second season, I watched like the first 2 episodes and was like, yeah, no, I don't think so. Not worth it. And I just never went back to it. And nobody asked me to. There was like 1 or 2 people out there who was like, are you guys ever going to get back to that? And when I was like, no, they were like, yeah, fair. Nobody was but what do you mean you have to?
What about Daredevil? Did you do season 3?
Yes. We did season 1 all in 1 episode.
Yeah.
We did season 2, I feel like we did it like an episode at a time, and then season 3 we broke it up into sections of 3 episodes at a time.
Right.
I think is how we did it, because we realized like we couldn't fit it into the schedule as 1 episode per, and it didn't feel like it really needed it either. But we wanted to cover it in one way or another. The only show that's like still on that people have asked for is Stranger Things. And that one, I started off with Maggie. She's no longer with Unspoiled. And it just always feels weird to me to suddenly pull a new host onto something midway. So I just sort of decided to drop that one. I'm not against it, but I know some people had like considered commissioning it for Spoil Me, and I would be down for that. But it doesn't seem to have quite the demand that I would have thought.
You haven't even watched that 3rd season of Stranger Things then?
No.
Oh, then people should commission that, because, I mean, it's not... Stranger Things is one of those shows where it's always fun to watch, but the first season was really like lightning in a bottle, and then everything since then has been good. Mm-hmm. Definitely watchable, definitely fun, but not zeitgeisty necessarily. But I really liked a lot about season 3. I would be interested in hearing what you think of it.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Jamie demands that you give me your money.
Also, my Starbucks is the official Starbucks of Stranger Things.
Is it?
There's a guy on the crew, and he comes in. For a while, he was coming in every day. Now it just depends on if they're filming nearby. But he said that he tried going to other Starbucks, and they don't make their drinks as fast or as good as we do. And so he will go out of his way to come and get the Starbucks from my store. And I said, so we are the official Starbucks of Stranger Things. And he said, yes.
I love it.
And I said, I would like you to bring Joe Keery in so I can meet him.
and he agreed laughed. Promptly and brought him in next week?
He laughed and said, he's very nice. And I was like, I am sure. I would like to say hello. I could have aimed higher and said Winona Ryder. But no, I want to meet Steve.
I feel like if I met Winona Ryder, it would be like, I would just be like, oh, it's Joe March. And she'd be like, that was literally like 25 years ago, girl. Get a hold of yourself.
Literally in 1993.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be like, oh my God. Veronica from Heathers.
And she's like 5 feet tall, right? She's so tiny.
She's 5'1". Jason worked with a girl, or met a girl who, she was like the girlfriend of a friend of his who was Winona's stand-in on Stranger Things. And he's like, that girl is so tiny.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine how tiny Winona is. I was like, well, exactly that tiny, because when you're a stand-in, you're basically the same height and size.
Yeah, exactly. Because all the lighting and everything has to work.
Yeah. So anyway,
Anyway.
what are we concluding here? Are we making any conclusions? Are we dotting it? And
I am dotting it. I definitely
Okay.
we got to cover Santa. Has to happen. So we'll do that.
did you recognize who's playing Santa?
I sure didn't. Who is it?
Nick Frost.
No.
Yes.
Oh, that's fun. See?
Yeah.
Okay. Then yes, we'll definitely keep pursuing that. But guys, I really want you to be as honest, not with me, as honest with yourselves as you can be. Do you genuinely think that this show gets good enough to be worth it? Because Jamie and I devote hours to this every week.
Yeah.
And I really feel like there's this sort of, I just want to see what you think about a couple of these like fun episodes, but it's not like the show as a whole. I don't feel like I get that impression from people. And
unfortunately, we have to suffer through the ones that aren't fun.
yeah, I don't want to like devote myself to a whole series when that's not really what it's about for y'all. 1 or 2 episodes, it's not worth it to put myself through this and be so upset. Because I am.
1 or 2 episodes, people could just commission them.
Oh my God, that would be really funny, actually, if people just commissioned me for random Doctor Who episodes. And I had seen nothing else, didn't know the companion. That would be actually pretty close to what it feels like now anyway, because I have no connection to the companion anyway. So I guess that's practically the same experience. But I don't know. I can't help but think a lot of this is just nostalgia.
I think a lot of it is.
I think that people don't want to admit that to themselves about some of their favorite things. And
I
that's
think
like,
that a
I
lot
don't
of it
mean
for
just
me was
Doctor Who,
that.
but what?
I think a lot of it for me was that I really loved. I loved the 9th Doctor, the 10th Doctor, and Matt Smith as the 11th Doctor, which I then, going back, as we've said a dozen times, I enjoyed his run as a whole much more than I had. But I always enjoyed him as the Doctor. And it was, I originally watched this show. My friend and I sat in her living room and binged the entire first season in one day. And I was just like, and I wasn't into it at first. We just kept watching. And then eventually I was like, oh, this show is super silly and fun. And it was just, it was like candy. It was like a little candy show. I enjoyed it. It was a snack.
Okay.
And I love aspects of it. I love the TARDIS, and I loved certain characters and companions and doctors, and never really put too much thought into a lot of the plotting because I was just into the characters involved. But it's really difficult now at the point we're at because the characters aren't great and the plots aren't holding up. So I have less and less to hold on to. And I still love what I loved, even though talking about it with you has made me reevaluate some of that in retrospect. It's okay. It didn't make me dislike what I like, but I love it. It's kind of like
Warts
there's
and all.
movies from the 80s that I love that don't stand up either. I still love them. But it's, childhood love. I've always loved 16 Candles. That movie is problematic as fuck.
Yeah.
But I still love it. I haven't watched it in a while, but if somebody says, "What do you think of 16 Candles?" I'm like, "Oh, I love that movie." That's kind of how I feel about Doctor Who. Like, yeah, I love Doctor Who.
I think that the things that are important to me in narratives just aren't important to the writers of this show. It's
I
just
agree.
Consistently, I talked to you about changing up characters, having a new doctor, new companions every season or even halfway through. That's really hard for me. I like to get attached to my characters. and
Yeah.
having there be like not consistent world building. The only consistent thing is that we are always going to have Cybermen and we are always going to have Daleks. And those are kind of the two worst things. And to keep bringing those back is so frustrating to me.
Maybe that's why I love the TARDIS so much.
Because that's consistent?
That's the only consistent world building there is on this show.
And see, for me, the TARDIS falls flat because there's so much I want to know about it, and we don't really get it. We have like a couple episodes where we explore it, but it's really weird shit that's like in all these other side, and there's nothing about just the day-to-day of what it's like to live on the TARDIS. How does that go? Very basic questions that I'm shocked haven't been answered by now. I really expected that because there's a lot of like room for comedy in there. You could have a moment you could have an episode of this show that's just about daily life as a companion on the TARDIS and the incredibly frustrating bullshit you have to deal with when all you want to do is brush your teeth, wash your face, get dressed, and make a cup of coffee. And that's literally all you're trying to do. And all of the bonkers shit that you encounter just trying to get that simple thing done. But we don't like, I don't feel at home on the TARDIS. It's we haven't explored it in detail enough, and it also changes every time the Doctor changes. So it's, I don't know. There's just nothing for me to like stand on. I feel like afloat, you know? I don't know. I feel bad, guys. I do.
I feel bad too. But I also, this is a lot of time put in every week. And I love podcasting with you, and I want to do something else where we can both be invested and enjoy it and not tear it apart.
Yeah.
Because as funny as that might be to some people, it's draining.
It's super draining. People will definitely act like I just want to hate on something, and I can't emphasize enough. Hating on something isn't fun for me.
No, and I'll tell you, I stopped listening to your coverage of Daredevil because you guys didn't seem to like it.
Yeah.
And I listened to like one episode of The Walking Dead because I wanted to see what you had to say about that fucking fake out of Glenn being killed. And
spoilers.
It was whatever. And it was, you clearly did not enjoy the show. And at the time, I also was on the verge of like, I don't think I like this show anymore. But listening to you and Owen not enjoying it was not enjoyable to me.
Yep.
As a listener, I want to listen to people talk about things that they love. Or at least something that like, it doesn't have to be your favorite thing, but you're enjoying yourselves.
Right.
Like, you guys are covering the Clone Wars. You're in a rough part of it. It's gonna get better. I promise. I promise.
I don't know.
I promise.
Okay.
It gets better. But I was afraid that you guys were going to be just tearing it apart, and it has been such a delight that you're finding things that you like in it. Even if you're not like, oh, I fucking love this. But you're like, yeah, no, that was badass. I really liked that thing. At least there's something. I don't know when the last time that you, about this show, were like, other than Missy, like, this is the first time where we've both been like, I fucking love her.
Yeah.
It's been a really long time since either of us has been like so tickled by something on this show. And when I think about, you know, there are episodes that are just flat out bad, but we were able to laugh about something because it was so ridiculous. That made it okay. That episode with Mark Gatiss, still, anytime I think about him turning into that monster, it makes me laugh.
That shit.
And I never even paid attention to that before you pointed it out.
I can't believe you didn't notice that.
I wasn't watching all of his movements until you pointed it out. And now, if I even think about him, that's what I picture, and it makes me laugh. When he popped up, I was watching Game of Thrones. Don't ask why I was. And he popped up, and I was like...
Oh, that's funny. Yeah,
But
I mean,
it's,
like,
you
I
know-
feel like the fact that I have gone a really long time without saying, okay, hold on, I'm going to screenshot this. This is going to be the screenshot for this episode. Indicates that I haven't been having the same kind of fun.
Yeah, because there hasn't really been anything fun.
Yeah.
I mean, there's one episode this season where I was like, that was really good. And that was the one, and not even really good. That was good. Flatline. That was a good episode. I liked the concepts. It was clever. It was different. It shouldn't be one episode a season.
I feel like every episode has wound up with us being like, so are we going to keep going this season? Like,
That's why I feel like we said, let's give Peter Capaldi a chance, because when I asked the listeners, the people in the Whovian group, when I asked, like, seriously, what do you think about the next Doctor? Because I wasn't a fan. And I don't know if I can convince Natasha to keep going once Matt Smith leaves. They gave me all of these instances, like tons of GIFs and screenshots and things that I didn't remember that were like lines that were funny and all of these reasons why people enjoyed his run. And now we're a whole season in and they're like, oh, next season.
I mean, people did say that out of the 2 seasons he did, this was the worst one.
Mm-hmm.
But
he did 3 seasons.
Oh.
He did 8, 9, and 10.
Okay. Wow. Didn't know that. Reevaluating everything. I mean, not to say that, like, oh, the fact that he's here for 3, but, like, that's a long run.
Mm-hmm.
How many did Matt Smith do? Did he do 3?
He did 5, 6, and 7.
Half of 7, right? Was it half?
No,
Did
it was
he do
the whole thing,
Okay.
but Clara was half of 7.
That's what I'm thinking of. Okay.
Yeah. So he did 3 seasons. David Tennant did 2, 3, 4, plus a bunch of specials.
Okay. So 3's kind of standard, I guess, then.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I don't know why that sounded, like, unusual to me. But yeah, I mean, like, because this is what I anticipate is that everybody is going to say, well, we knew you were going to want to quit this one because this season in particular sucks. And that's why we voted for you to speed it up, because we do swear it gets better. That's what I anticipate the response is going to be. And I don't trust it. So,
and
there
I
you have
can
it.
probably even guess beyond that. Oh, well, just get to this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Or just get to this episode. I know there are episodes in that season that they've specifically, excited for Natasha to learn this. Or that this person is in an episode.
And see, part of the reason I don't trust that either is because there are things that you've told me people wanted to live watch, me watching, that I had no reaction to, really.
Yeah.
So I'm worried that people are going to be, I can't wait for her to watch this and find out this thing. What if it doesn't matter to me? That's what I'm worried about, is that there's going to be I can't wait for her to see that such and such. I mean, it was the return of Clara. Everybody wanted to see my reaction to the return of Clara. And it turns out nobody even likes Clara. Why did you guys want me to, like, why?
Here's how I feel about anything at this point is you haven't had an attachment to anything in this show for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So what makes anybody, myself included, think that that's going to change at this point?
Yeah.
So let's just be honest about, like, is season 9 actually good?
Is it that you love it because you have grown to love these characters? There's a lot of nostalgia attached and it makes it fun for you. But from the outside, when I'm not invested, do you guys really think that I'm going to have the reaction that you're hoping for?
Right.
I really want you to think about it.
Because I really do think that there's a lot of nostalgia involved here, for sure. Mm-hmm. And some of it is nostalgia for the old Doctor Who, something that, you grew up with that's always meant a lot to you from childhood. And some of it is that the earlier seasons just hit a pleasure center for a lot of us. Mm-hmm. And, I gave up Doctor Who, and it wasn't... It's not like I felt guilty, but I was, sad about it. Oh, it really sucks that I'm just not into it anymore. Mm-hmm. But I would still go back and watch the stuff that I liked.
Right.
And never really... I felt like I had an obligation to myself to watch the seasons that I'd stopped watching just because I'm a fan of Doctor Who, and I still wasn't into it. Mm-hmm. And I am somebody, as you have pointed out, will stick with things and like things that don't deserve my attention. Mm-hmm. I'll say something is great, and you're like, I don't trust you. Why did you even like that? My best friend has said it too. Of course, she was wrong because she said that Snowpiercer sucked. She's wrong about that. But she told me she would never trust me again after I told her to watch that movie, and she hated it.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jamie, but that is really funny to me.
I mean, I'm not lying. You say that all the time where I'm like, no, I really like that. And you're like, what is wrong with you?
Yes, that's true. 100%.
So I will forgive things because I'm enjoying myself anyway. Mm-hmm. And I really love Doctor Who. And I couldn't get myself to sit down and watch these seasons.
Yeah.
When they were on, or even when I had to force myself to marathon it, and I still wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, I think that...
I'm way more forgiving about stuff than you are.
Yeah, you're more forgiving, and, I am willing to forgive if they've built up enough goodwill. It's banked, and I will use that toward whatever fucking problem I have. But this show has just repeatedly shown me that they don't really give a fuck. It's just over and over again. They get me invested in something that it turns out they have no interest in pursuing. Or they get me into a character that they decide they're going to kill off or sideline or whatever. And it's just, whatever it is that the writers value... it's different from what I value in a show. It feels like, I've talked about this on Mistborn with Miles, that there has been this thing that happened ever since the Sixth Sense, where it became this sort of everything has to have a twist, and we're always trying to trick our audience. And it really feels like this show has grown super invested in tricking their audience and making us suffer. Just because they think that elevates something more than it actually does. They believe that, killing a character is proof that they're serious about whatever. And it's but you didn't make it mean anything, so now it's even more annoying. It's just weird and backward. I don't understand how I can have such a divergent priority set. I don't know.
I don't think you have a divergent priority set. I think that the people who work on this show don't want anything to be too deep.
That's not true, Jamie.
Really?
They want things to be deep. They don't want to put the effort into making it mean anything. They want to have a moment with her losing her love and their connection before she finally ends his life herself, and it's so dramatic, and they're clinging to one another. They desperately want to be deep. They don't want to,
but they don't put in the work to earn it.
No. Exactly. It's that's what I find sort of insulting, is that they seem to think I won't notice that they haven't earned it. And that they can just pull some heart-wrenching shit, and all of a sudden I'm going to be like, wow, look how serious this show can get with human emotion. But they don't and it's not like they never hit it I talked about the episode with Rose's dad, and I cried during that episode. I thought that was really well done.
It's the reason that Doomsday worked.
Which one was Doomsday?
Doomsday was the one where Rose got stuck in the other dimension.
Right, yep.
That worked because for 11 episodes leading up to that, we saw the relationship with her and the Doctor building. Mm-hmm. We saw their connection. We saw their chemistry. We believed that they cared about each other. Mm-hmm. And then she was taken away from him, and it was heartbreaking. Or they were taken away from each other.
Right.
When Rory and Amy had to succumb to the angels and how devastating that was for the Doctor, we understood why. Mm-hmm. And how much they meant to him. And since then, it's like there's not any real effort put into building relationships. It's all tell and no show.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
I understand why sometimes you have to tell things. You can't show everything, but you've had an entire season.
Yeah.
The same amount of time that Billie Piper and David Tennant were on a show together. And I believed their relationship. They were only in one season together.
And you guys know that, like, I keep saying, because I have said from the start that the Doctor's a dickhead. And when Peter Capaldi's, like, stint began, I was like, oh, looks like they're actually going to address that a little bit. Imagine my astonishment that they just decided to make him a dickhead. That was it. They haven't actually had it be addressed. Not really. There's been no consequences for it. Mm-mm. He can treat everybody exactly how he wants. And apparently all that's going to happen is that Claire is going to get mad for like 10 minutes, be told to forgive him immediately, decide to do that, and then say that he's her best friend.
And lie to her boyfriend about it.
Oh, yes. Like, there's just...
Her boyfriend who didn't tell her not to.
There's no reason for it. There's no reason for any of it.
Yeah.
It's just...
I know. It's very frustrating.
Why would you keep bringing up that he seems to have no empathy and is a dickhead if you're planning on doing exactly nothing with that except have him be a dickhead with no empathy? What's the point? Why? What is the reason? I just don't understand what they're trying to say. What's their, Mm-hmm. What is it that they want the audience to be feeling about this? Because it feels like it's just teaching people to put up with somebody treating you badly. Like, this is part of that whole thing with, like, men who are intelligent but assholes are supposed to just be tolerated because of their genius. Mm-hmm. I'm over it.
I love to harp on Stephen Moffat. This really seems to be his, like, MO. Mm-hmm. He just seems like a shitty person who values shitty things in people. Mm-hmm. And emphasizes that in his shows.
So, I think that's that.
Can I give you one piece of trivia?
Sure. Go ahead.
2 pieces that are interesting.
Knock yourself out.
One of the books that the Doctor has hidden a TARDIS key in that Clara picks up is The Time Traveler's Wife.
Oh,
which
okay.
apparently influenced the character of River Song and the plot of The Girl in the Fireplace. So while Stephen Moffat might be a shitty shitbag, he likes a book that I think is wonderful. So that's cool. Also, there's a story called Dismemberment that reveals that Danny was run over by Missy on purpose.
I was wondering if that, because she said something that alluded to the fact that she killed him. And it wasn't like ever, nobody seemed to notice it or ask anything about it, but I was like, wait, what? And then it's not brought up again. So, okay, I definitely believe that. That works for me.
Also, Clara, at the beginning of the second episode, tries to convince these Cybermen that she's actually the doctor and that she's been lying, made up the name Clara Oswald and all that, to keep them from killing her. And apparently, and I would have to go back and look, this is the only time that they changed the opening sequence, the title sequence. So instead of seeing Capaldi's eyes, you see hers.
Oh, okay. I didn't notice that.
And her name came before his.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. So, I think, let me see, this is the second time any aspect of the face of someone other than the doctor is in the title sequence. The first was the 1996 TV movie, which also featured the eyes of the Master.
Oh.
But this is the first time where the name of the actor playing the doctor is not the first name to appear in the title sequence. So that's fun. That's like that time that they changed the Buffy opening credits. Oh, no, it's not. That's like the time they put Tara in the opening credits, and then she died in that episode. Because Joss also is a troll.
Yep. Definitely.
Everybody loves Missy. When I asked everybody, like, what do you think about these episodes, blah, 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 it was overwhelming that they were excited for you to learn who Missy was. Because everybody loves Missy. And everybody should.
This is tragic.
I know, I wish she had shown up earlier. But while the audience feedback on these episodes was mostly positive, the negatives from everybody was all the dead people becoming Cybermen. People didn't like that. And they also didn't like the Brigadier becoming a Cyberman. A few people said it's like if one of your favorite companions suddenly was a Cyberman, it felt like a slap in the face to old Doctor Who fans from Stephen Moffat.
Okay. Yeah, I had no reaction to that because I don't have an association with him, but I could see that.
Same.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, we didn't really even talk about the whole premise of the thing, but it really, like, if we were really doing they would outnumber, there would be too many of them to fit on the Earth, right? I think we can safely say.
Yes.
But I did like the whole, you're conscious after you die and you feel everything that your body is feeling. That's a fucked up premise. Now, we know that none of what was going on is what it looked like. And I don't really know what it was that Missy was trying to accomplish by making him think that. Is there, like, do you have a theory on that? Because it was, like, meant to... He is eventually given the chance to delete himself.
To delete his emotions.
But if... that was the thing, the emotions, the physical sensations would still be there.
I never quite understood, like, okay, so people die. She figured out how to get their consciousnesses.
Conchi?
And, I don't really understand how any of it worked. Like, the idea of this, like, cyber pollen getting into the earth and connecting with this organic matter to make these skeletons suddenly become Cybermen, fine. Where all the metal came from, I don't know.
Yeah.
Danny being on a slab in the morgue, suddenly sitting up and being a Cyberman because the water, sure.
So, I think that we've covered all of that.
I think the concept of having consciousness after you die and still feeling what's happening to your body is fucked up.
Deeply.
And creepy. And worse than that meme that Rashawn shared about having a job after you die.
Oh, God, yeah. That's a real Dresden Files thing.
Even though there's a great show called Dead Like Me, where they're reapers, and that's their job. They die, and then they're told, well, now you're a reaper, and they have to go and take souls from people who are about to die.
Rude.
It's actually a really good show.
So I'm going to say hi to new patrons real quick. This
Okay.
week we've got Chloe and Kirsten Blessing. So welcome to both of you. Thank you very much for signing up, and I hope that you enjoy all of the content that you get as a patron. I think one of you signed up at the $20 level, which means that you were going to get access to Unsober, and you're
What's
going
the
to
next
enjoy that.
Unsober?
I don't think we decided yet. The one we just did was on game shows.
I missed it.
And that one was mostly Rashawn because I don't really know anything about game shows. I never watched that many of them growing up. And so she really took the lead on that.
I feel like Rashawn and I could probably talk game shows really well.
It filled that 2 hours like it was nothing. Let me tell you, turns out. But we also did talk about some celebrity gossip. Just a variety.
Was it about Armie Hammer being a cannibal?
No, it was about Derek Jackson. I don't know if you know, or Darren. I think Darren Jackson. He is a relationship guru, and it was discovered that he was cheating on his wife, and he did like a fucking Facebook Live video apologizing to his fans, and was holding his wife's hand the whole time during this Facebook Live. And she was like wearing a bonnet, like she had been woken up and rolled out of bed, and he made her get on camera. And it was just, he eventually came out with a video where he evaluated his own video in the third person. It's a whole thing. So that's that. So anyway, if you want to know more about all of that, please become a patron and you will be mystified along with the rest of our audience. It's like, evidently, it was me and Candace who knew about this dude, and then the rest of his audience is black. It's mainly black women that he speaks to, which is part of why Rashawn did not and does not fuck with him. But yeah, it was a whole thing. Yeah, he is. Huh. And his whole bit is basically like telling black women what they should look for in relationships and what not to tolerate anymore.
You know, it's always the people who are preaching the shit that are doing the shit they're preaching against.
This is it. Indeed, ma'am. So, that's what's going on there, guys, if you're interested in that. But anyway.
Unsobers are really, really fun. So if you are on the fence about becoming a $20 patron.
I think they're super fun.
Like, jump over to that side where you're in the $20 category.
I will admit that I have been a little bit too loopy on a couple of them. So apologies for that. But I think that they are a good time. So what can I say?
They're a good time.
All right. Is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap?
No. Bye. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.